Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Carrie's Gardening Channel. Today is March the 30th, 2018, and I want to talk to you about what to look for when selecting tropical hibiscus bushes. Okay, so spring is it's coming, and the garden centers are soon going to be full of beautiful tropical hibiscus bushes. And I'm going to give you some tips on what to look for when selecting them. One thing that you want to look for is you want to look the plant over and make sure that it does not have any aphids on it. You want to check the leaves, the flower buds. You want to check the stems, make sure they don't have any scale on them. So what scale looks like, it looks like oval black raised bump on the stems and on the branches of plants. It can also be like a brown color. And what these do, they actually pierce into the stems and branches of your plants and they suck the sap out of them. And they can also be on the leaves. And your plants will start turning yellow. They'll start looking sick looking. So definitely avoid any plant that you see that has those on it. You'll also want to check for white flies and spider mites, and avoid plants with black spots on the leaves, because that can be a sign of black spot, and that's not something that you want to play with or bring into your garden. And another thing that you want to look for is try and lean the container over some and see if the roots are coming out of the bottom of the container. I had bought one time. This was years ago when I first started gardening, and here it didn't have an established root system to it, and it actually didn't live. So I was really disappointed about that. So checking the root system is a good idea. Now you want to be you don't want to damage the plant or damage anything when you're checking that. And you also want to make sure that the plant seems to be well rooted in. You don't want loose shaking stems or anything like that in the container. You want everything to be nice and rooted in really well, because the wind will actually help to tear them loose if they're loose in the container. So it's good to get a plant with a good root system to it. Now, when you buy these, it still is getting cold out where I'm at. I'm in Pennsylvania, and we still sometimes get frosts and different things. So if you do buy one and they're calling for it to get in the 40s, definitely bring it inside. Don't let it out. And also the wind can have a wind chill to it. So make sure that it's not going to get too cold for it with the wind blowing. And if they're calling for a frost, definitely bring it in. If they're calling for a freeze, bring it in. You can put it in a well-lit area. You can put it near the windows. Just keep it back some so that it doesn't get too cold or freeze through the window. I've had plants freeze in windows already because it just got too cold for them. And for actually getting the plant itself, what to look for, you want a nice green foliage. It can be dark green foliage, that's okay. Just if it's really dark and doesn't have any blooms on it, then it was fed with too much nitrogen. So you'll want to switch it to a different plant food. And what I feed mine is I feed mine a Miracle-Gro all-purpose plant food. I'll put a link down below, and I'll talk about that more later on when my hibiscus bushes actually get to go outside, because they're still inside in the basement. It's way too cold for me to even take mine out right now. Another thing that you can do is you can feed them with a Bloom Boost, a 15-30-15 plant food, and I'll explain how to feed them with that later on in another video after mine go outside. And hibiscus bushes are heavy feeders, so I do feed mine once a week when they're outside. I feed them with either the Miracle-Gro all-purpose plant food or I feed them with the Miracle Grow Bloom Boost 15, 30, 15 to make sure that they get their food that they need. Now, you never want to feed a dry plant because you can burn the root system on them. So just make sure that your plants are well watered before you feed them, and that goes for any plant. Once you burn the root system on a plant, you're pretty much done. There's really nothing you can do to try and save it or bring it back. It kind of depends on how bad it's burnt, but you definitely want to make sure your plant is well hydrated before you feed it. Hibiscus bushes like full sun, so the more sun you can get them, the better off you are. They grow in the tropics, so they're used to getting the sunshine. If you're just taking your plants out, you might want to keep them in the shade for a little bit. I did a video on how to harden your plants off, which I'm going to be doing with mine before they actually go out into the sun, so they don't get sunburn and windburn and all that stuff, because that can damage the foliage, and we don't want to do that. We want our plants to be nice and healthy. So selecting a nice sunny area for them is a really good thing. Now on watering, they do like moist, well-drained soil. They don't like to sit in water. They don't like to have soggy soil. So if you do transplant it, you want to make sure that you get really good draining potting mix. So if you choose to transplant them, Miracle Grow potting mix, I've transplanted mine into that already. They seem to do good in it, or you can let them just in the container that they're in. That's fine too. Just make sure that you keep them watered. They do like to have their water, but you don't want to overwater them. Like if it rains like the night before or something and they're saturated and soaked with water, you definitely don't want to be watering them, and I have seen people doing that already. And that can lead to things like root rot and stuff like that. So you don't want to overwater your plants. Now they will dry out because they are in a container, so they might dry out quicker, like if the wind's blowing. So you'll just have to check them for water. Usually if the soil feels dry on the top or like an inch down, go ahead and water them. And you want to give them a thorough watering to where the water will run out the bottom of the container. And you want to make sure that your container has nice good drainage to it so that they're not sitting in water and anything like that. And another thing with tropical hibiscus bushes is they can become like top heavy, so the wind will try and blow them over. So if it gets real windy, you might like want to lay them down like on your deck or something so that the wind doesn't just flap them over and throw them around, because it can break your containers and it can damage the plant. So that's something that you do want to keep in mind if you're getting a really windy day, because I know the wind knocks mine over. Storms knock them over when they're outside because they are top heavy from growing. And another thing that I forgot to mention earlier in this video, I apologize for that. When you go to buy your plants, check the stems. Make sure the tips of the stems don't look withered, and make sure that they're not like dying. That could be tip dieback. You don't want to bring that into your garden, so I would avoid a plant like that. If you have a plant already where the tips are starting to die on it, go ahead and cut it back to new growth with a clean pair of pruning shears. Now, how I clean mine is I dip my pruning shears in alcohol, and then I let them dry, and then I clip out the dead stuff, and then I clean them again to make sure that they're nice and clean before they go to the next plant. And by cutting back to where the good growth is, you should be able to cut that out, and it should stop the disease from going any further in the stem, because mine sometimes will do that, and I just have to cut them back to get rid of that. So I'll come back a little bit later on here when my plants go outside on a more in-depth thing of how I feed them and of how I take care of my tropical hibiscus bushes. So if you like my video, please like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, you can leave them below and I'll try to answer them for you. Please don't forget to hit that little notification button that tells when I put a new video on. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye.